Every man I know is fighting one of two battles.
One of the first moments in my life where I felt I really had a void.
Young men that yearn for the validation of their father.
We've never had that connection or that relationship.
They grow up with an emotional absence, a void.
17 or 18 when I thought to myself, I'm like, damn, like what did I do wrong? Why did he leave?
And if you're used to feeling lesser than, you learn how to get over it quicker. Here's the thing that nobody tells you about the father wound. Failures Podcast. Learn from our failures and our mistakes so you don't have to. Today, we are talking about father wounds, the void left behind when fathers are not around. Rich, every man I know is fighting one of two battles. Either you're becoming your father without realizing it, or you're just spending all your energy trying to prove you're not him. But honestly, bro, both are the same wound. Here's the thing that nobody tells you about the father wound. Kids like me and you who grew up without dads or dads that were not around at pivotal points in our lives, they grow up with an emotional absence, a void. They don't just get over it. They spend their late teen years, their 20s and their 30s, either copying the same emotional shutdown or becoming people pleasers. We see a lot of people like that in our community. They overcompensate in either one of two directions. And the saddest part is that they grow up subconsciously knowing that something's missing. And it doesn't become clear until they get older. Rich, was there ever a time when you were younger and you realized that you did have a void when it came to this thing that we're seeing online called the father wound?
Yeah, bro. I remember being 14, 15 in high school, entering the dating scene, going through puberty and having all these questions about, becoming a man and sensitive questions, right? One that you wouldn't feel comfortable asking your mom. And I remember just looking around me for that sort of male figure and not having it, and like it devastated me. I'm like, man, these are definitely moments where I wish I had a father to speak to, get advice from, and learn how to navigate puberty and ultimately becoming a man. Very tough time for me growing up. And that was like one of the first moments in my life where I felt I really had a void.
I love that you explained that, you broke that down, because the idea came from a few subjects that we wanted to touch on that we haven't. And we're about 15 episodes into the Failures podcast catalog. Why the father one was so important to you?
I feel like most men have some sort of relationship with their fathers, whether that be good or negative or critical about their fathers. A lot of times you attribute your upbringing to either your mother, your father, or both of your parents, and you sort of nitpick as to the things you liked about your upbringing, the things you didn't like. And I just remember having that father void being such a pivotal thing in my life where I'm like, man, there's more people like us without fathers or absent fathers than there are not. So I'm like, we definitely have to unpack, just share some advice about how we were able to reframe our mentality to not feel that victim mentality of like, man, I grew up without a father and I've had this void my entire life.
I love that you brought that up. And, for our consistent viewers, they know that we always take the approach of not claiming to be gurus or gods. We do touch on a lot of subjects, whether it be with women or finances or just growing up as a young man in 2025 and beyond, right? We have a different situation with both of our fathers. Your father was pretty much absent. I don't know when he was absent. I'd like you to get into that. But my father, a lot of people do know him where I'm from. He's a very notoriously well-known guy for a lot of the stuff he did in his personal life, how he made money. He was very active in the street. He was, as us Puerto Ricans like to call, a callejero. He was somebody that ran around a lot in order to make ends meet. And I find myself conflicted with this particular episode because a lot of the resources and the subjects we're pulling from are people that their fathers abandoned them at birth or they left them early, which is more of your situation. My situation is a little bit different because my father was around, but he was very much preoccupied by a lot of other things. A lot of my push and pull that comes from this subject comes from that. So I almost feel like a fraud doubling down on the things that I want to hear from you first. Tell us a little bit about growing up without a father and when did it happen and how does this subject resonate with you?
Yeah, for sure. So my pop left our family when I was 2 years old. I think my mom was already pregnant with my brother. So he left super early on. I really didn't get to know him early on in life. He sort of popped in and out around like 7 or 8 years old, popped in again around 12 or 13. And when I say pop out, I mean like, hey, let's go hang out for a day, right? And then just drop us back off. Not any sort of real relationship. It wasn't until I got older that I realized, wow, like he has been missing for most of my life. And we've never had that connection or that relationship. It wasn't around 17 or 18 when I thought to myself, I'm like, damn, like what did I do wrong? Why did he leave? Well, was it something we did? Like, were we not enough for him? Like, what is he running away from? Like, I wanted to have that relationship with my pops, but he just didn't seem interested. Just wasn't something that felt like it didn't matter to him. And I just always remember self-reflecting to myself. I'm like, damn, like, is there something wrong with me? Like, did I do something wrong? Did me and my brother, push him away? And that's a very real thing to feel. Most young men feel they're the cause as to why their pops is not around. And that's sort of one of the first things you have to reframe, and we'll get into that.
I'm glad you said that. I want our listeners to know that the first half of the episode, we're going to dedicate to unpacking what a lot of younger guys in our community are going through. Even older guys in their mid-20s, late 20s. Rich and I are dead center in the middle of this subject. So we want to speak on our own personal situations to give more context to this wound that is left behind by not having a father figure or having a father do other things other than raise you in a way that you've probably seen other people getting raised. We will unpack that in the first half, but the second half, Rich and I are going to get into, I think, the best case scenario for you and me, Rich, which was how we approached this, I want to say flaw. It almost felt like it was a flaw growing up that we didn't have what other kids had. We didn't have what other young men had, and how we weaponized it. We turned that fuel into fire, and we've become, the language used in a lot of these research papers, which I went down a rabbit hole just to try to give myself like this self-therapy. They call it overcompensation. That's pretty much what it is. A lot of broken young men who either come from abusive fathers or fathers that weren't around or fathers that neglected them or young men that yearn for the validation of their father, what happens is they wind up overcompensating. And I want to get into the back half of the episode of how that overcompensation has, I think it's helped both of us. You're in your mid-30s, I'm in my late 30s. And I almost got to thank the way I was raised for being a big reason for how broken I am when it comes to conquering any problem that's in front of me, because I refuse to feel that feeling that I felt when I was a kid and I was kind of abandoned. That's part of the overcompensation. And I want to get into how we could flip this negative narrative and turn it into a more positive narrative. Some of our greatest mentors and people that I admire come from the most fucked up backgrounds. And I think you can't have one without the other, as unfortunate as that sounds. So my calling to young men is that you're not doomed. This is not something that should cripple you. It actually should help you with what comes later in life, because life is not easy. And a lot of these situations when you grow up fatherless or with this void of validation, it actually carries into adulthood. And if you're used to feeling lesser than, you learn how to get over it quicker.